Hello, yes, it's me. I'm back here at Bike Gating, and look, two hands. Well, two hands. I have not got a fancy camera stand. I have instead stolen my wife's music stand while she's out, and she'll never know. Well, actually, she will, because they asked her beforehand, because, you know, I'm not that stupid. Anyway, I've decided to do a third video. My second video was so popular that literally tens of people watched it. So I thought I might as well do the third one. And as you can tell by the image in front of you, today's is going to be about Mantic's new Armada game. Sorry, I'm still getting a hand of where my hands are compared to the camera. So, Mantic's new Armada game. Fantasy battles, the game of epic naval warfare in fantasy world that they made up. That I can never remember the name. Penathor, something like that. Generic fantasy setting. The game itself is heavily based off Warlords' Black Seas game, which is your traditional Age of Sail naval game. For I think the miniatures for that are 1 to 600. Which we'll go through in a moment. Anyway, I'm going to do a quick flick through of the book and cover the basic rules. I will caveat this: I have only read this book once. I have not moved any miniatures around on a table, but I've not been doing that for many months, since it's currently illegal here. So, quick flick through the book, quick overview of how it all works, and some vague thoughts at the end. So without further ado. So, we've got a very rough contents in there, not brilliant, let's be honest. Some fluff, no one cares about that kind of thing. A what's in this book section, it's probably exactly the same as what's written on the back. If you're getting to this point and decide you don't like it, too late, you've already bought it. Now, here we are. Actual things to do with the actual game. So, mentions things you'll need in the game. Models. All the models, with one exception, which I'll come to at the end. Mantic's models, they're made of resin. There are currently 4 factions out at the moment. But again, I'll come to that towards the end. There's some shiny pictures on the back of the book. Dice. The game uses D10s and a couple of D6s. Primarily D10s. Tokens, the game requires many tokens. Several of these though just come with things like damage, activation, things along those lines. So you can probably use stuff you already have if you need to. The big token called the Wind Rose, which is just something you put on the end of the table to show which direction the wind's blowing from. Again, could be anything as long as it doesn't wander off. So I would recommend using a hamster or a cat or something along those lines. Anything else will do the trick. Measuring stick or tape measure of some description. Game uses inches. And you'll need a table to play on. Seeing as it was a naval game, I thought I'd use my Dreadfleet's mat rather than my green mat I've used in the past few videos. Just because, you know, chance to get out of the packaging, isn't it? Anyway, in the game, every model has a ship card. You can see one of them here. Got various bits of information on it. So you can see on here that the ship has where's my finger? Points cost, movement value, structure points, how many points it takes to destroy the ship, nav value, what you get up to before the ship's crippled, and when it gets to there's a chance it might just surrender, crew strength using board actions, place to stack your damage counters, so you don't just pile them up all over the place, list of the type of weapons it's got, size of the ship, special rules mentioned here, turning angle, name of the ship, faction symbol, which, you know, you probably don't need those because if you haven't worked out what faction you're playing when you're already halfway through the game, it's a bit too late. The weapon, well, the dice, should I say, you need four different colours of dice. Blue, red, black and green. They just determine the type of gun you've got. You could, of course, use whichever colour you've got dice you've got. Again, these are D10s. I would say you can use whichever dice you have. However, I know full well that if I do not use the dice colours mentioned here, I will just get confused. If I say, oh yeah, this black dice is actually green dice, and I'm using an orange dice instead of the blue dice, and this clear one's actually a red one, I'm just going to get confused. Get that back into focus. There we are. So that's everything you need to know, really. Ship size, there are 5 sizes of ship. Tiny, small, medium, large and extra large. All ships follow the same basic rules apart from tiny ships, which are also called squadrons, which have their own set of special rules. So nothing much to go on there. Some pretty pictures. Don't really bother that. Right, basic rules. So the wind, when it comes to the game, the wind will be blowing in from one table edge to the other. To determine initiative, whichever ship is closest to the wind moves first. Not really how sailing ships work in real life. Whoever's closest to the wind moves first, but you know, it's a nice mechanic. Means you get to use wind in a naval game. What more do you want? You could have some really complicated wind rules. There are more complicated wind rules in this in the appendix, optional rules section. I'll come to those in a minute. But anyway, that's how you determine initiative. Ships closest to the wind, activate first, and furthest from the wind, activate last. You go in that order. What have we got here? So, activations. When you activate a ship, there are 4 speeds your ship can be moving at. Can't remember what they're really called, but it's basically anchored, slow, medium, fast. I think it's anchored, slow, battle speed, and fast. Slow's probably got its own special name, but you know, I can't remember these things. Everyone gives made up names to everything these days. I can never remember what any of them are. Anyway, so you declare what ship your speed's going on. You can speed up or slow down once before you activate your ship. You can turn at the end of each movement step. So if your ship is moving medium, you get to move twice. So you get to move your ship, turn it, move again, turn it. If you're moving fast, 3 times, turning at the end of every move section. Then you'll do shooting after movement and then boarding actions. And then there's the generic end phase for tidying up activated ship. So yeah, there you say movement. So this ship can move 6 inches. So you can move. Oh, there you are, steady. That's what it's called. Anchored, steady, battle speed, full speed. Anyway, turning. There's 2 different types of turning arc in the ship. You turn from the back of the ship, I assume because rudders. You will, there's red arc and yellow arc turning. Yellow arc is tighter than red arc, just depending on the size of the ship basically. The bigger and more clumsome the ships, the worse its turning arc is going to be. Put this funky little template at the back of your ship, turn it. Disengage is to do with if you're grappled, which I'll come to in a moment. Fluff, pictures. Collisions. You cannot voluntarily sail your ship into another ship unless you have a special rule saying you can otherwise, such as the Orcs. Orcs have a special rule saying they like ramming their ships into other ships. If, due to your own ineptitude, you would end up colliding with a ship, you both need to make an evade test. If you pass the test, or at least if one of you passes the tests, no one crashes into anything. If you do collide, there's rules for that. Basically, it's a bad thing, unless you're Orcs. Shooting. 4 arcs on the ships. Front, stern, left and right, or broadside and starboard and port. If you'd rather use, correct terminology and things. Weapon ranges are fairly short, as you can see here. There's basically just 4 types of weapon in the game: heavy, light, close quarters, and indirect. And the different coloured dice that associate with them. To shoot at your enemy, you need to make a gunnery skill, which is based on a d6. I think the base target value is, I think it's a 6. I could be wrong. And there'll be various modifiers to that, as can be seen here, as to how easy or hard it is to hit the ship. Roll a bunch d10 equal to what it says, and then depending what the weapon was, depends how much damage it actually does. I apologise for... I don't know what I'm talking about, do I? I'm completely messed this up. I'm not going to restart the video though, because I'm lazy. Now here we are, yeah, depending on what the weapon is, depends on how much damage it does. I was right. So heavy weapons do 2 damage, light weapons 1 damage, close quarter weapons 3 damage, and indirect weapons a d6. There are criticals. If you roll a 10 when you're rolling to hit, you get a critical. Criticals are fairly boring, I have to say. It's just a case of most of them just does a bit more damage to your ship. Nice though. Raking fire, if you shoot up the rear end of the ship or into the forward end of the enemy ship, you have given it raking fire. This is bad for the enemy ship, you do a lot more damage. Fire a ship airs, a nice little Overwatch mechanic. Basically means that when you activate your ship, you can fire with a penalty as another ship as you go past it, or if your ship hasn't activated yet, if the enemy ship moves in front of you, you can fire on it as it comes in front of you. I should add that when you're firing, you do it at the end of an activation when you turn. Each set of weapons on a ship can be fired once per that ship's turn, but it does mean you can move, fire to the left, move, fire to the right. If you go at the correct speed. Ships can get set on fire, it's bad. If your ship's crippled, it has to make a nerve test, it might surrender. Surrendering is also bad. Some more pretty artwork. Boarding actions. Basically, get close to a ship, grapple onto the ship, get close, start fighting each other, crews move in and start fighting. You just get a load of dice equal to the crew rating on the ship, and again there are some modifiers on there. And whoever wins the fight does a load of damage to the enemy ship. If you don't sink it, you can remain grappled and do some more the next turn. Which is the ongoing boarding action thing. Or you could choose to disengage, run away. Additional special rules. Squadrons. As I said, these are the tiny ships, smallest size in the game. They ignore a load of rules. They can basically move whatever speed they like up to the maximum speed. There's no slow, medium, fast, anchored thing. They ignore several other rules, like other ships ignore them for line of sight purposes. If you've all got regular crew, normally for line of sight, you have to shoot at the closest enemy. If it's a squadron, you can ignore it. Or if you're a veteran crew, that you can then pick as well. Oars and engines, in the base version of the rules, oars and engines just give you a free turn. They do both exactly the same thing. So dwarves have engines. The only ships with oars that are coming out in a moment are the Empire of Dust. But more will be coming out in the future, no doubt. Repairs, rather than doing other things, you can try and repair your ship. Will it be worth it? I'd rather just shoot the enemy, but you never know. It might come in handy. Don't sail off the board. If you do, it's bad. Terrain, stuff to crash into. And there's also some very localised weather effects. So you can get a rain cloud, that's basically a 12-inch blob on the table. The full wind rules, so these are the more complicated wind rules in the game. This is all to do with the direction the wind is pointing when you activate your ship. So if the wind is coming in from this direction, and you've got a ship at the sides, you're fine. You can move at battle speed. If it's behind you, you can move at full speed. If it's in front of you, could be crossing in front, you've done something very wrong. The ship's blowing into you, you have to become anchored, i.e. stop. Or you can attempt to tack, which is a skill test. If you tack and are successful, you move just to be out of the wind and get a small move once and then stop. Well, not stop, not anchor, but end your movement. Building a fleet. Basically comes down to it. Building a fleet is you need to have one ship per every 50 points in your army. So you can't just have like two massively powerful ships and nothing else. There are some ships which are classified as support vessels, and you can have 2 support vessels for every 1 regular vessel in your army. That's about it really, I think. There are some upgrades you can have. You can have mundane upgrades, such as boarding X, lucky crew, master gunner, swivel guns. And some magical upgrades, which are all sails of honey maze, mind fox scroll. My favourite, crystal keel of retribution. Basically, when your ship dies, it explodes. These are just the standard generic ones. When it comes to army list building, each race will have its own specific set of upgrades as well. Then we'll come to the scenarios. I believe there are 10 scenarios in the game. These range from your basic maritime patrol, which is your basic lineup of try kill the other guy, and I've just knocked the stand I'm using. So the camera's gone wobbly. You get capturing krakens, just getting buried treasure, vortex in the middle of the ocean, various shooting the enemy but with slightly different layout on things. This one's storm travelling around the board. This one's just getting victory point tokens. Again, just destroy the enemy, but they're coming in waves. Capture the, plant the flag. So yeah, anyway, 10 different scenarios, enough to keep you going, including the fairly basic ones. There is a section on background fluff, which I won't go into, generic fantasy fluff. Some pretty artwork. This one shows elf vessels, which aren't actually a thing in the game yet, and also dragons and somewhere dwarf zeppelins. So hopefully that's a teaser that we might be getting some aerial assets coming out from the game, but nothing about that so far. More fluff, more fluff, more fluff, 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 fluff. Ah, here we are. Now, onto the fleets. They said there are 4 and a bit fleets currently out of the game. There are no stats in the book, which I'm slightly disappointed by, because I like reading some stats in the book, even if it's just a couple of ships, just to give you an idea. The only stat block in this book is that one I showed you at the beginning, where it gives you an example of the stat card. So if you want the stats, you have to buy the boats. And they come on cards with the boats as you buy them. So, there's the Basileans, I believe you pronounced. Religious humans. They have a really big boat. Basically, they've got lots of boats. Everyone's got lots of boats. It's a boat game. Their shtick is they're religious humans, fairly pious. I think they're the generic faction, as it were. They use traditional looking sailing ships with your fantasy bent, so you know, castle on the back of your ship, giant flaming figurehead ladies, that kind of thing. And there's a picture of their boat. I quite like the Basileans, I have to say. I could be tempted by them. There are the orcs. Orcs like getting big and choppy and close. You can see they have saws and fists and various ramming things and biting things inside an orc ship. And big cannons and a drill and other crazy contraptions. Some pictures of the orc fleet there. There is the Empire of the Dust, which are your dry undead. So you keep knocking this stand. I'll have to think of a better thing to do in the future. Dry undead, so your traditional faux Egyptian style undead. So big galley with a pyramid on top, because that makes perfect sense. Sail galleys, but with oars. It's got the cannons out the front, and blisters, and giant crystal thingies, and all sorts. Well, these are probably the ones I'm going to get to start with anyway. These are the ones, these aren't out yet, they're up for pre-order. I think they're coming out at the end of the week, and I'm waiting for that so I can order some and have some tiny fancy ships. I don't think they're that tiny actually, I think they're very chunky. And of course dwarfs, iron cards, big ship in armour, big ship in armour, big ship in armour, big ship in armour, little ship with a massive gun, little ship, dwarves. Don't do sales. And I said 4.5 because the other thing they have done is they have released a pack, which means called the Kingdoms of Men, something like that. That you could. Sorry, I did remember this, and it's gone completely in my head. I should have written all this down, of course, before I did the video, but I'm lazy. So I think it's the Kingdoms of Men. There is generic humans, you know, generic bulk standard baseline humans, don't get anything special. You can buy a card pack for them, and that's designed to be used with Warlord Games Black Seas ship miniatures. So it basically means you can get a 50 hour in the game, and that does have the advantage that most of those ships are hard plastic. So if you want a plastic army, with a few exceptions, get that card pack, get yourself some Black Sea ships, and they match up scale wise. I think you just need some bases. You can get bases for the game from Mantic. And at the back of the book is a couple of quick reference sheets for everything on it, and that's it. There's no index, which, I mean, how long have we been wargaming now and telling people they need to put indexes in their books? But still haven't put one in. Never mind. So that's it. Mantic Armada. Not played it yet. I am going to be playing it. Basically, there's 5 of us so far, which is quite good because I said there's the 4.5 factions out there, which we've divvied up between us. Are we getting the Empire of Dust? However, they have announced that they're doing a preview day on the 10th of April. The actual preview day, I should say, on the 10th of April, where they will be revealing what's coming next for the ships, for the game. New races. Rumours at the moment are elves, which would make sense because, you know, fantasy setting. The Varangar, I think it's pronounced, which are Angry Fancy Vikings. And there was some sort of faux Chinese ship where no one's quite entirely sure what that one's for. Anyway, so there you have it. The rulebook comes in a set. So normally you'd buy the rulebook. If you're buying it from Mantic, it would come with the rulebook, and it would come with a few punch boards of tokens, which I think it's about 25 to 30 quid, depending where you get it from. However, I did just buy this book off eBay for about 12 quid. Which means now when I've started playing it, I am going to have to get some tokens from somewhere, but that's my problem. Anyway, time for a cup of tea. That's Mantic Armada. Cheers.